Welcome to the 20th episode of the Honor Society, a very special episode previewing the biggest event of the ROH calendar, SUPERCARD of Honor. We are about an hour away from showtime. As always, I'm the Ace of Tavern, live from the No Sale Studios, Acefield Retro, and joined by my partner that's so filled with honor, at Mullet.mania, Colton. What's up, dude?
What's going on, man? I am so excited for this show tonight. This is, I might be a little biased, but man, we got a big weekend full of wrestling, and I think SUPERCARD of Honor stands to steal the award for best show all weekend.
Yeah, we had GCW kicking us off yesterday, and obviously they get off to a really good start, and the collective is something you should check out. But you're right, man. Tony Khan took the word to heart, SUPERCARD, and he really created one, man. We're going down the list. It's hard to really imagine anything topping it this weekend. It's going to be insane.
Yeah, just zero fluff on this fucking card, man. I mean, it is just banger after banger after banger. I just can't wait.
So before we get into it, let's just talk about SUPERCARD of Honor. And if you guys are just new to ROH, you guys are an AEW fan, and maybe you haven't experienced Ring of Honor, this has been a yearly tradition since 2006. So there's some lineage here. And ROH and AEW have done a really good job of tapping in to the videos and all the packages, and really the video library is what's so valuable about ROH. And I think even if they weren't doing this TV product on a weekly basis, what lives on this, the compilations that exist in this and wherever they store it is so valuable to building up lineage. And, this has been going on since 2006. So there's a lot of history here, Colton.
Oh yeah, most definitely, man. I mean, I think SUPERCARD of Honor, I've never watched one that I was disappointed in. It's just pretty incredible. I mean, I know that looks like between the only deviations so far that we've ever had have been between the 2010 and the 2011 SUPERCARDs, which were held about a month after WrestleMania weekend, if I got that correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the 2019 event used modified G1 SUPERCARD name, and it was co-produced with New Japan Pro Wrestling. But after annually running from 2006 to 2019, event took a 2-year hiatus, and SUPERCARD of Honor 14 has been scheduled to take place April 4th, 2020. Just really, really excited to see. We've talked about it multiple times on the show here, weeks leading up, of how good the pay-per-views that we saw from Tony Khan after buying Ring of Honor without any lead up were last year, and just having 5 weeks of TV leading up to this card is just setting it up to be a really, really strong show.
Yeah, completely agree with you. And the funny part is a lot of people were talking about what would Tony Khan do last year when SUPERCARD of Honor was coming up on the calendar, and he had purchased ROH, and this has always been a staple of WrestleMania weekend. They either run in the same city or pretty much driving distance, so the fans that are in town for WrestleMania, they'd be able to go the Friday before WrestleMania for ROH. And who could blame Ring of Honor for doing that? It's the biggest event of the year. And obviously it's we talked about this WrestleMania weekend being a hub, LA being the source. And it was always interesting because Tony Khan was never wanted to be the little brother to WWE. And that's always been a mindset thing. And he's never going to catch WWE in, our lifetime, I think, as far as like being a conglomerate. But I think he kept to the tradition in a good way by attaching himself to this weekend. I'm glad he did, because it gives us a little bit of that AEW flex on a WrestleMania weekend, where otherwise you have to rely on Rampage and Dynamite to steal the show. And they do that, but they're in LA this weekend. And this is, by all intents and purposes, an AEW production that's going up against WWE.
Yeah, man. I expect it to kind of be the talk of the wrestling world after this weekend. I mean, Mania is Mania. It's always going to be a bigger stage and bigger eyes on it. But I mean, I think if you're even a casual fan, if you're remotely tapped in, man, you're going to want to see this show. And if anybody's going to watch it, I think it's going to be, it's going to hold up. I think it's going to steal the weekend.
And I'd like to thank everybody for watching, last night and checking out all the stuff we've been doing here on Honor Side. It's been awesome to be your source for ROH, and everyone's been giving us, such love here. So if you guys are in the chat right now, please just let us know the matches you're looking forward to, and you can go down the list. I mean, you mentioned before, it is actually a SUPERCARD, like literally to the word. Every match, no fluff. And I'm sure we're going to get some matches announced in the coming, for the 0 hour. There might be a match that we don't cover here, but for the most part, everything on the main card, we're going to go through with a fine-tooth comb and tell you guys what you should be looking for.
Well, man, let's go ahead and get into it.
All right, we don't have a bumper to do that, but let's do something with the bumper. Let's use the scoop bumper. Why not? Let's use it. right, we're not talking ROH news here, but we do have the scoop bumper, and I think it's one of my favorite bumpers in all the taverns. So I'll let you lead the way. You pick the match you want to discuss, and we'll get into it.
Man, let's start with the Reach for the Sky ladder match. I'm very excited about this match. I think that the way that that Ring of Honor has handled the transition of titles from, obviously Mark Briscoe to the way that we're going to see these belts get on another team after Jay's passing has just been absolutely perfectly executed. This is going to be a huge match. You've got you've got the Kingdom, you got Matt Taven and Mike Bennett, Aussie Open, Top Flight, Lucha Brothers, Drew Lustico and Roosh representing La Faction Ingobernable. Man, this thing is just going to be absolutely insane. Like there's not a team in this match that's not entertaining to watch on their own. It's I'm really hoping to see. I mentioned on Wrestling Tonight this week when you and Chad had me on. I really hope that we get to see Mark incorporated in this in a little bit. Maybe they bring him down to the ring. He puts the belts, onto the hook, and they take them into the rafters before things get started. But I mean, I don't see any other place on the card for this other than opening the show. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And we heard yesterday in the news that Mark Briscoe will come out and present new titles. So we didn't hear, as predicted, it's going to be every title, but I'd imagine that the Pure Championship is going to get a makeover, the Women's Championship is going to get a makeover, and the World title. But I think this is a good start with the tag titles because you have the new logo. Obviously, you want to retire the current model with the Briscoes. They're the forever ROH tag champs. And I think Mark, will be out there with these titles to put them up in the rafters. And I'm curious what these new titles look like. I know that's kind of lost in all of this. It will be a nice turning of the page for ROH. And I think having that new fresh logo, I'm a big fan of the logo they have here and just separating from what Sinclair was. And right now, if you look at the women's title with the one Athena's holding right now, it has the O that's like kind of crossed over, but obviously the Claudio world title has the old school logo. Yeah. So it's about preference at this point, but I think it's a good thing to separate themselves. And I'd imagine Tony Khan's going to have something really nice whipped up because all his championship belts have been really nice.
Yeah, I've never been disappointed by one that I've seen Tony bring on TV. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm really excited to see what the new belts look like. I think it's, you can definitely see with the TV title, especially, and the women's title, like you get a close up on those belts right now, they're showing their age. They're a little bit beat up.
Yeah.
There's some scuff marks for sure. So I think this is the perfect opportunity for them to bring some new gold out and let us get a look at it. I don't know if you noticed or not, I caught a glimpse of it and I had to go back and rewatch, but during the preview that they aired on Honor Club for SuperCard of Honor prior to the weekly show yesterday, looked like in that promo that Claudio was holding a new Ring of Honor world title. So he never got a clear shot on it, but I could definitely tell, like, it wasn't a clear shot of the whole belt, but it looked like the shape of it in general of the center plate was different. So maybe we're getting all new belts for everything. I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, that was a good catch on your end, because if people remember when Jonathan Gresham was holding that title, he brought back the old school traditional ROH. So he came back out with that title. He went 1-1 with Bandito last year at SuperCard of Honor, where Bandito had the old school title, or like newer school title, but still old school with the ROH Sinclair logo. So I think it's time to make a very cohesive movement and have all the ROH championships match each other. And like I said, Tony Khan has had a really good eye for these things like championship belts. I can't pick one. Maybe the first ever women's championship that was tiny, but it was in that Japanese wrestling type of model. But even the new women's title is epic. But going back to your original question, I think this match has to open because it's going to be, as you mentioned, just high flyers and fast pace and setting the tone for the night. And I think if you put this anywhere else on the card, you risk tiring people out. I think you got to get them off to a hot start. And there's really not a let me down match here. There really isn't. But I think this match would really hurt other matches around it, because how could you follow that in the sandwich in between? You might as well start really hot and everything else has to follow it. That's just the way I look at it.
I completely agree, man. I think it's going to set the pace and set the tone for the night. I mean, that's one thing I've been really impressed with Ring of Honor Weekly TV has just been the pacing of everything every week. A lot of that, they do have on their side that they don't have any advertisements. So, you don't have to break up the show for an ad. It definitely helps with your pacing a little bit. But yeah, I think the best way is to open up the card with this, man. I mean, I don't see it going any less than 20 or 30 minutes. Hell, maybe even longer. I'm not sure what time limit they're going to put on it. I imagine probably an hour.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll put a 30-minute time limit on it. That would make it even more explosive to be able to have to know that you're going to pack all that action into 30 minutes or less. But as far as who do you think's going over here, Ace? Who's your pick?
Well, I originally had said Aussie Open, I feel like is going to be the new team they're building around ROH, but it's like with the new championship and tribute towards, the Briscoe brothers and maybe Mark presenting the titles and Aussie Open being like a heel team. It feels a little weird, but I'm still sticking with my pick. Aussie Open going to be the team that they build around. And this could signal that they're really having a working relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling in a good way, and then continuing that. And maybe Aussie Open is going to be here throughout the summer. That's exciting to me.
Yeah, man. That was my pick originally too earlier this week, and I think you mentioned they're sort of a heel team. I think we're seeing them kind of ride the line of maybe not being so. Last or week before last on TV, after they had the match with Daniels and Seidel, they stuck around, they shook hands after the match, showed signs of respect and honor between the two teams. That's not necessarily something I expected to see from those guys when they first showed up on Ring of Honor TV, kind of calling out the old guard. And I think that they're just so incredible to watch. I think, putting the belts on them might be kind of the beginning of the transition for them to be kind of one of the top babyface tag teams in Ring of Honor. I've gone back and forth a little bit, man. I've kind of gone back and forth between Aussie Open and Derlistico and Roosh, but I'm with you. I'm going to stick with Aussie Open here. It seems to make the most sense. They're the most exciting, I think, new tag team in wrestling today. So yeah, I think it'd be a good spot. And like you said, continue to highlight and that handshake between New Japan and Ring of Honor.
Yeah, and you can make a case for any of these teams in a perfect scenario. I think the only team right now that has, no real story in ROH. I mean, obviously we saw them last night on TV was the Lucha Brothers, but obviously they're taping right before Dynamite. So the Lucha Brothers feel like they're the odd man out in this ladder match, but they are paying tribute to, what a ladder match should be. You get a lot of the different flair of the high flyers, obviously with the Lucha Brothers being the best as far as high flying tag teams out there and setting the benchmark. But yeah, anyone goes over in this match, I would be very happy. I think you go through the list and there's different possibilities of what this tag division can look like going forward. But I think first and foremost, it starts with Aussie Open. I really want them to build around Fletcher and Davis and then continue to have them be on our weekly TV, not just have spurts of, hey, we're taping for 6 weeks and these guys happen to be here. I'd rather them be really essential parts. And the other beautiful thing is you can have these ROH tag titles out in New Japan Pro Wrestling and show them off, and that's a good way to outreach and show other fans like, hey, ROH is back. Do you guys forget, or did you not even remember, or maybe you didn't hear, but you guys can check it out on Honor Club. And it's a good advertising thing to put the titles on someone as long as they're willing to come back. We obviously saw on the other side of things, FTR held those other titles hostage, the AAA tag titles and the IWGP tag titles. They were almost held hostage here in the United States where they weren't defended. I would like an equal thing where Aussie Open spends a lot of time here, but they also go overseas and, spend some time there with those titles in tow.
Yeah, I mean, most definitely. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said there's really no outcome to this match that I won't be happy seeing. You could put this on any team there, but yeah, gonna stick with the pick, Aussie Open. Like I said, super excited to see this one play out. It's gonna be an absolute classic, and just to have 5 teams in a ladder match, man. I mean, it's gonna be a crowded ring.
So let's get into the Pure Championship, and this match is certainly interesting, and they finally made it official. You and I have seen the rumors. We talked about this on the last few weeks of shows, and Wheeler Yuta has been working up to the big boss that is Shibata and feeling like after beating Clark Connors, there was only one way to go. And obviously we saw Wheeler in the ring calling him out. Shibata's had that history of the injury, and it's been well noted that, he made his return to the ring in 2021. I mean, he was retired for 4 years, Colton, and forced after suffering a subdermal hematoma brain bleed in a match against Okada. Nasty stuff. Headbutted himself into pretty much a 4-year retirement. Then he came back, in his first match back, he went to a 5-limit draw with Zack Sabre Jr. in a UWF rules grappling match, which means like at this point, you can't really, it's sparring at this point. You want to keep them safe. It's not about all the high spots. But then we saw Shibata face his LA Dojo protege, Ren Narita. And then this is the match I mentioned. They went into business for themselves at Wrestle Kingdom in 2022. A lot of heat on them there because the producers of the match didn't know they were going to do the things that they did. Very dangerous. And maybe they felt like Shibata wasn't ready for it. But I think things have changed since then. he definitely came back to AEW and worked there against Orange Cassidy, as I mentioned as well. I took a pretty clean loss to Orange Cassidy in November 2022. If you guys remember the weird night on Rampage, Mike Tyson's in the announce booth, and he's wrestling Orange Cassidy. Whatever does it for you, but it was cool to see Shibata in AEW nonetheless. And obviously, we saw Shibata against Filthy Tom Lawler at the IGF show in December, so he hasn't been that active. Like, he's been back for a bit, but as far as like matches go, it hasn't been a lot of tests in his way. So I think the obvious thing here is that Wheeler Yuta goes over, because we saw Shibata willing to put guys over like Orange Cassidy. It's not about winning. He's a legend. He's already established his name, but it has me spinning my wheels about potentially Shibata here and the dream matches we potentially could have. Just the top of my head, Bryan Danielson's there, Daniel Garcia, Timothy Thatcher, Jay Lethal, Minoru Suzuki, and the list goes on. I would like to see him get a chance with this championship belt. Is that my prediction? Probably not, but it has me really fantasy booking if Shibata has a little bit of a run here, kind of like Suzuki had last fall or 2 falls ago, where he spent a significant amount of time in AEW. This could be exciting.
Oh man, absolutely. I mean, just Shibata and Yuta is a dream match in itself, but you bring up a really good point. Yeah, the list goes on of dream opponents that, if Shibata takes it. I thought it was interesting on the Supercard of Honor preview show that they had on Honor Club that Ian Riccaboni and Caprice Coleman were split on this one. So, Ian Riccaboni said there's no way that Yuta's losing this belt. He's hot. He's hungry. He's got a lot to prove. And Caprice Coleman's like, I think that Shibata's coming in and he's got even more to prove. He's going to prove that he's still got gas left in the tank, that he's not ready to hang it up. So yeah, this is kind of one of those pick'ems, man. Like I'm with you. I think that, to me, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to take the belt off of Yuta right now, but you could really, you could do a lot with putting it on Shibata. Maybe this is what, is this a comeback for Shibata? Is this what he's looking for? Because obviously after going into business with himself, or going to business for himself at that, in the New Japan show, New Japan's not calling him back anytime soon. He's not, I don't think he's going to be on their programming after that. And, maybe this is an opportunity for him to show that he can work safe, he can do business, and that, he's not going to be doing things as recklessly as he might have in the past. So yeah, man, I hadn't really considered what it looked like putting the belt on Shibata, but it would be a very, very compelling, long story. The storylines there are potentially endless. So yeah, going to be interesting to see how this one plays out.
Yeah, and the other thing I'm thinking about too, and obviously you mentioned the BCC is the hottest thing on AEW program right now. They're dominating, they're weaving in and out stories, they're attacking everybody. They've had this program going with the Elite, or simply just Kenny Omega. They beat up Don Callis on Wednesday. So there's a lot going on with that. But it has me thinking too, maybe they're leaving ROH altogether. Maybe it's the chance to get the ROH championship off of Claudio, so he's fully on AEW television. Maybe you want to get the pure title off of Wheeler so he could be fully on AEW television and move towards, again, separation of church and state. AEW and ROH should not really integrate unless for big shows like this. And I think right now, if BCC is going to be an integral storytelling mechanism on AEW television going forward, which I'd imagine throughout the summer they're going to be, with Moxley being full-blown heel, them dominating television. They may be moving away from having Wheeler part of ROH programming, and whether that's a good decision or not, that's a conversation for another time, but that might be what their thought process is. I just don't see it. I think the momentum is building to keep the titles on BCC. There's some cool optic about having Mox being flanked by 2 guys with some gold, but I don't know. It has me really thinking, man, that's the beautiful part about this match. It could go either way. And again, similar to the tag title match, I don't think anyone would be happy if it went either way. I think people are just looking for a good fight with the pure rules in place.
Yeah, which that we're absolutely going to get with these 2 guys. There's no way this match is going to disappoint. That's a really interesting point you brought up about getting the gold off of the BCC guys so they can be exclusive on AEW. I hadn't thought about that yet. That makes a whole lot of sense. I've personally been really happy with the speed and the execution of the heel turn for BCC. I, kind of been wondering how they were going to do that, how we were going to heel turn Mox, and I think they've done a really good job with it. So, yeah, either way, man, I'm going to be happy with the outcome. It's going to be a hell of a fight.
Yeah, and if Shibata has even like a couple months off where he just is there for whatever it be, 3 months throughout the summer, similar to the Minoru Suzuki October run where he wrestled guys like Bryan Danielson on AEW television, put the title on him. Why not? And just do all these dream matches and let people learn from him. Because that's the other thing people don't remember. Shibata has so much to give to the business, not just in the ring, but working big matches, working that stiff style. And like he is a fountain of information that you have access to at this point to so lean on it. And maybe the best way for people to learn is getting in the ring with high stakes on the line. It's not just him producing your matches and giving advice. Maybe it's just working a match with him. And a guy like Daniel Garcia, I mean, we're going to talk about his match in a second against Tanahashi. He's been wrestling kind of a who's who of wrestling. And it's a dream match for a kid from Buffalo to think about what he's been, that ride he's been on so far since, he's been included in the JAS. But man, I think this could be really exciting and the possibilities are endless. My gut, I'm staying with Wheeler Yuta just because of the momentum. I can't see Wheeler losing. I just can't, especially with how they've been booked lately. But I don't know, putting my booking hat on, the Shibata stuff definitely intrigues me. If you have a guarantee he's going to be on your programming for at least a few weeks, at least, closer to a month or two.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I'm going to stick with Yuta as well. I think there's it's been really interesting the storytelling they've done with his heel turn, with him pulling close fists and other things behind refs back during pure match rules, and I just think that's a really nice layer of disrespect and adds a really a nice seasoning to him as a heel character, and also holding that belt. I think there's a lot more meat on the bone to get at with that part of the story with him continuing to hold this belt. And I mean, Yuta's the only 2-time pure champion, right? Yeah, so I think I don't think there's I don't think they're taking it off of him anytime soon. I think he's got his own little reign of terror with his belt.
So we mentioned Daniel Garcia, and might as well transition to his match with, this was just announced yesterday, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and the ace of New Japan Pro Wrestling. He's one of the company's top stars. He's an 8-time IWGP Heavyweight Champion, a 3-time IWGP United States Champion, among other accolades that make him one of the best to ever step foot in the ring. And we mentioned the year and the last 2 years for Daniel Garcia continued his rise through pro wrestling and the opportunities he's having of working with these guys. This one came almost out of nowhere, and this is the second time we're going to get Tanahashi under an AEW program. We got him at Forbidden Door where he wrestled Mox. It was supposed to be Tanahashi versus CM Punk, but we instead got Tanahashi versus Moxley because of the whole Punk foot injury. But this match, too, I mean, kind of happenstance. Tanahashi happens to be in town, and he wasn't even supposed to be in town. He was a guy that is just replacing Will Ospreay in the match against Mike Bailey, which happens to be airing Thursday night. So, result of that match remains to be seen. Full disclosure, we're recording this the night before doing the preview. And it wasn't supposed to happen, but I'm sure Tony Khan saw, all right, he's landing. We got all these awesome international stars in the fold. Kota Ibushi came in. He's working GCW, where, by the way, Kota is amazing, but he has an injured shoulder and he's working that injured. So that stinks. But maybe we'll see Kota involved in AEW programming. But Tony Khan was like, hey, all right, Tanahashi's in town. He's replacing Will Ospreay in the Super Show with Impact and New Japan Pro Wrestling. Let's just bring him in. And it works out. I mean, the fact that he's going to be able to be working with a guy like Daniel Garcia, who could learn so much from him, epic opportunity. And this match doesn't have the build you probably would want around something like this, but who cares, man? This match is going to be awesome for everybody involved.
And I think, Ring of Honor is the perfect platform for matches that don't necessarily have a whole lot of build or story behind them. I think it's the perfect place to have these dream matches, kind of, or dream matchups that you might not have thought of happening any other place. I think, Daniel Garcia is one of my favorite guys doing it, period, today. Has been for as soon as as soon as I started seeing his indie stuff and some Buffalo promotions. I think the kid is just light years ahead of his time. I'm really excited to see him getting a little bit of a singles push as well on the AEW side. I know he's still technically associated with JAS, but he had that match with Adam Cole's first in-ring promoter. I never would have picked Daniel Garcia. Would not have been my first thought to be Adam Cole's first in-ring opponent coming back from the injury. But after it was announced, I was like, I can't think of a better first opponent for him. So yeah, man, I think this match is going to be a banger. There's like you said, there's not a whole lot of build, but who cares? It's going to be really, really good showing. keep putting Garcia with these veterans across multiple promotions, and the guy's just 5 years from now he's gonna, I think, absolutely be revered as one of the best doing it by anybody watching.
The booking is
Go
going to be
ahead.
so challenging on this, though, because look at Tanahashi. He's one of the main stars of New Japan Pro Wrestling. And at this point, he is like the John Cena of New Japan. Like, it doesn't matter if he wins or loses. But imagine, Gato allowing this to happen. Obviously, Tony Khan and Gato have to get in the room and make a decision based on, decisions and the fallout of a guy like Daniel Garcia wrestling Tanahashi and the fallout. I'm thinking Tanahashi's getting the win here. But imagine if Daniel Garcia got the win here. I mean, we saw him beat Bryan Danielson. That that's Bryan Danielson's doing. That's happening in-house in AEW where they have the full say. But relationships, as we always talk about in Shot Nostalgia, throughout the history of wrestling between different promotions, that's what makes these Forbidden Door, these super shows so challenging. And when you have a working relationship with these different promotions, it's hard. And that's what really gets in the way. And we talk about all this like fantasy booking, like let's get WWE and AEW in the room. It wouldn't be so much the talent not being able to work together. It's really just who goes over. And like, that's the thing is with New Japan and AEW, they've had a really good relationship of give and take, where sometimes the New Japan guys are going to win and look strong, and sometimes the AEW guys are going to look strong. I don't know. Maybe Tanahashi recognized a guy like Daniel Garcia, who is one of the brightest young stars, not just AEW, all of wrestling. This win could go a very long way. Imagine saying you beat Bryan Danielson and you also beat Tanahashi. Doesn't matter where it was. Doesn't matter what the build was to the match. You have that. Say you beat the ace of New Japan Pro Wrestling. It's absolutely amazing. My God, I think Tanahashi wins here, especially coming off of that match with Mike Bailey. I don't know how that's going to go, but Mike Bailey is a focal point, a pillar of impact. I'm assuming Tanahashi is going to be losing that match. So I don't see Tanahashi losing twice in this tour of the United States, this short little weekend. So I think Daniel Garcia comes out on the losing end here.
You bring up a good point, man. Especially with, we had just this Wednesday, Jeff Cobb losing to Kenny, and how the New Japan and the New Japan and AEW relationship has been a good back and forth. My original inclination was Daniel Garcia goes over here, and it's just another notch in his belt, and him getting the nod from some veterans as being one of the next big things. But yeah, that's a good point, man. I don't know if he's gonna. I don't think Tanahashi's gonna lose to Mike Bailey. I mean, I could see it going either way. You know what? I'm gonna stick with my guns here. I'm gonna go with Garcia. I'm gonna say Garcia goes over. I mean, like we said, Tanahashi is, he's the John Cena. Wins and losses don't matter to this guy anymore, man. Or at least they shouldn't. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Garcia getting the nod here.
And this has a chance to be one of the best happy accidents in wrestling. Of course, nobody wanted Will Ospreay to ever get injured, and we would like to see the Will Ospreay and Mike Bailey match, and I'm sure we'll see it somewhere down the line. But sometimes in wrestling, the best, even like obviously the Moxley and the Tanahashi match wasn't supposed to happen, and that wound up being a very memorable encounter that we may have not have gotten at that pay-per-view. We've seen Tanahashi versus Moxley in the past, but seeing it on an American stage, that was very memorable. So I have a feeling these guys are going to go out there and have a really good match with, looking at this card, like it kind of blends in. This could main event any show. And I truly mean that. A guy like Daniel Garcia, even though he's young, he's a bright star, he's still building what he's going to be. He has enough legacy behind him where he could main event any show. He could be the guy you build around an ROH if that's what you decide to do. And he's another guy similar with the BCC. He's tied a lot with what's going on with AEW programming. He's very involved with AEW programming. So I don't know if we're going to have the Daniel Garcia show taking on ROH. I would love him to get the full repackage and just start coming out to just his music and maybe move away from being a sports entertainer eventually and have him be the future American Dragon. Like I see a lot of Bryan Danielson in him. So, going back to that feud, I don't know, passing the torch to him and have him carry what the new ROH might look like. I don't know. Very exciting.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think we're already seeing kind of breadcrumbs of that dropped, like that promo he had with Adam Cole where he came out and called him out. He, stumbled there and called himself a professional wrestler. And then, regurgitating what he's been spoon-fed, but Jericho stopped himself and called himself a sports entertainer. I think the writing's on the wall, man. I think it might not be happening, in the next 3 to 6, but I think that turn's coming. And I'd love to see him separated from JAS and built as a single star. And I mean, I think he's a natural baby face too. I mean, he's a great heel, but man, I think he's got potential to just be a white hot baby face.
Yeah, and I think it's weird too because and that's what makes their booking of the JAS and Daniel Garcia so interesting because the predictable factor would have been he turns on the JAS, he gets his moment, then he's that face. But I think they did the right thing by keeping him with JAS and not turning him because with the AEW roster, if you're not involved in a storyline that's consistent, we've seen how it happens. You blur to the background and then disappear. A guy, Daniel Garcia, might have disappeared from our TVs in a big way, similar to Wardlow, similar to Miro, guys that have just no storylines continuing. And no one could have been hotter than Wardlow when him and MJF split. So imagine what would happen to Daniel Garcia after the JAS split. The best thing is staying on TV, even if not wrestling. You're at ringside. Chances are someone from the JAS is involved in something that night. And then you're just there cutting promos. And that's been the best thing for Daniel Garcia. And I had my doubts putting him in the JAS with the sports entertainment shtick. It works, man. So I think they saw the long goal here, and it was just to kind of let him sit under the learning tree on a weekly basis, to traveling, learning at ringside from Jericho, because it's different than just watching Jericho's matches. Sometimes he's at ringside for these matches, seeing what Jericho brings and how he's running these matches, and just the maestro of the orchestra that is pro wrestling is Chris Jericho, and he's sitting right there. It's like, learning from Babe Ruth, sitting right there and learning how to swing a bat. That's how amazing it is.
Oh yeah, kid's definitely getting a master's class from one of the greatest. So yeah, it's gonna be real interesting to see where he goes next.
So if we go into the next match here, if there's one let me up match, it's probably this one, and it still has the chance to be very exciting because you look at some of the faces in this match. It's for the 6-man championship, and you and I have been talking about the division or lack thereof of the division, but this match has been built over the course of the last 3 weeks, and this is having an opportunity to put these guys on the card. And we obviously know the Embassy is the reigning defending champions. We got Brian Cage, who we talked about yesterday on the show. Just his contract's up. We don't know. He might be finishing up with ROH, and we may be seeing the last of him here. And he, to me, feels like the perfect mix for WWE, but I digress. That could be a conversation for another time. Toa Leone and Khan. And then we have this mishmash team of AR Fox, who's usually with Top Flight, Blake Christian, GCW original, I guess you can call him, All Heart, love him, and then Metalik. So these guys are going out there, and do you think, Colton, they have a chance to take the 6-man titles, especially if Brian Cage is leaving?
I think if anybody has a chance, it's this kind of hodgepodge of a team of AR Fox, Metalik, and Blake Christian. They've been, we've got to see a little bit from them on weekly TV of them together, and I think it's great. Do I think they're going to stay a trios team forever? No, but I think they've got a better chance of anybody at taking these belts off the Embassy. I mean, I think it's been no secret that Brian Cage's contract is coming up. But I will say that, you asked me 3 weeks ago, I was like, oh, there's no way the Embassy loses this match. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think that if it's looking like Brian Cage is on his way out the door, I think it's a damn good chance that these guys take it. And I think that the pair up of AR Fox with Blake Christian and Metalik is absolutely intentional. And I know that we're used to seeing it with Top Flight, but I think, especially now that Darius is healthy and has stayed healthy, I think their Top Flight is going to be their own thing. They're going to get a big tag team push. I don't know if I expect to see them staying specifically with ROH or if I expect to see them, going back to AEW programming a little bit more often. Plus, I think that I think AR Fox also has a very, very bright future in ROH as a singles competitor. So I think that they go over here. I think Embassy loses the belts, and not to digress too much and go down a rabbit hole, but you're talking about Brian Cage, maybe being a perfect fit for WWE. Man, wouldn't it be some shit to see him pop up on one of the nights of WrestleMania here? We've always talked about, WWE, it'd be 2 years in a row for them to get a big get from the other company, but to have him show up on ROH TV on Friday and then pop up on WWE programming either Saturday or Sunday, be a pretty good way to intro the machine.
Yeah, and he's working without a contract right now too. So it's kind of similar to what we heard on the Renee Paquette Sessions podcast with Moxley. We've seen TK work on handshake deals, which is unheard of in this time and day of wrestling where people are working, going to business for themselves. But the trust with Moxley, I don't know if you listened to that podcast, but the same right now is Brian Cage's contract's expired. He's doing right by this with these 6-man titles. But man, this hodgepodge team just feels weird to be the ones taking the titles off. And maybe that's just a testament to what these 6-man belts are right now. There is no division, but it makes no sense, especially if you just at the last pay-per-view had Dalton Castle and the boys, and maybe they didn't know Brian Cage was going to be leaving. That was part of my conversation. Like, if Dalton Castle and the boys are right there, and maybe even put the titles on them on one of these ROH tapings if you have an inkling that Brian Cage won't re-sign, unless they're using the gold as some incentivization of keeping him happy or satisfied or fulfilled in some way. But this feels weird that if the 6-man belts go on a team that has only been teaming for the past 3 weeks, I don't know, it's further emphasis on maybe the title shouldn't exist at all.
That's where I think they're going, man. And I think that especially if this is the outcome and they put the belts on the hodgepodge, I think it's a sign that we might be seeing unification of the trios and the 6-man between AEW and ROH. And I think that's absolutely the smart move, because right now, I mean, the tag team division in ROH is absolutely fucking stacked. Like it's really, really in good shape. And I don't want to keep, throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks, randomly building trios teams just to keep these belts alive. I mean, I think between the two promotions, there's plenty of belts. I think I think it would be a good way to see them combined and, maybe keep the trios, because there's definitely a little bit more of an established trio scene over at Ring of Honor or over on AEW now. I mean, I don't know if we're splitting up Kenny and the Elite, but we've got Kenny and the Elite. We can throw Hangman back with Dark Order. We've got the, House of Black, reigning champions right now. I think there's a little bit more of a scene there. I mean, we also saw Dalton Castle and the boys show up on Dynamite this past week. So,
right.
They definitely got run over. But either way, I mean, maybe we start seeing those guys. It's kind of hard to think of Dalton Castle and the boys as being on the AEW scene, because they're so quintessential ROH. When I think ROH, Dalton Castle is one of the first names that comes to mind. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see, man. But also, I mean, I don't want to put it past. I'm happy, like what little we've seen from Blake Christian, Metalik, and AR Fox. I've been impressed with what they do together. So, who are we to take away from, man? These guys might become, maybe they get a name to call themselves and they become one of the, the face of the trios or the 6-man division in ROH and really kind of lead the charge into building a new one.
Yeah, I look at this as being like, this is just an embassy win. And if you look, the only thing keeping me thinking it's a potential that this hodgepodge team, and I know we just named them the hodgepodge team, they get the win here, is the Brian Cage contract situation. Other than that, this just feels like they're going to mow through Blake Christian, AR Fox, and Metalik. That being said, again, going back to the 6-man championships, I don't know if they have a place on the future of ROH. If the divisions, this is the biggest show of the year, right? ROH this is their WrestleMania. And this is the 6-man division you have on display. And I'm not taking anything away from the 3 competitors in the ring. I love all 3. They're amazing competitors. I love Blake Christian. I've been very high on AR Fox. Metalik has shown a lot of promise in this ROH run. But that being said, that's the 6-man showcase. You don't have another 6-man team that you built a story in. Every other division has a very meaningful story. Go with the TV title, obviously the world title, the tag titles. They all have a very big, integral story going through them. The 6-man titles are sticking out like a sore thumb here. And maybe you just use Brian Cage leaving and strip him and then make them disappear. Maybe that's what they do. But I think the right thing to do for wrestling history, if you were going to dissolve, to combine them with like House of Black, have House of Black come on and just take them. I don't know how you get there though.
Yeah, there's quite a big gap there on how you book that, but man, I think you said it best. This is the only thing close to a let me up match on this card. My prediction is this match goes 12 to 14 minutes max. It's probably going to be the quickest one of the night, which I'm totally fine with. But yeah, I think it all hinges on Brian Cage's future, man. I mean, I know on Wrestling Tonight this week I said that I think that Brian Cage isn't going anywhere. But the more and more that comes out, the more rumors I hear, it sounds like he is probably heading out. And I mean, the guy's got a great look. He's been done very well since he's made his return with AEW and ROH. I don't see how a dude of at his age and in the shape that he's in, how you don't want to go somewhere and get a little bit more of a singles push.
Yeah, I'm a big Brian Cage fan, and I think his best work on Showcase was the Impact run. And if you watch any of the things he's done in Impact, they used him perfectly. So And I understand like work rate doesn't mean a damn thing in AEW anymore because everybody works amazingly. So if like what made Brian Cage stand out in a lot of places he was the ability to look the way he does and be able to do the things he does. So you can look at a guy like Wardlow. Wardlow does whisper in the wind. He goes up the top rope. He's a monster. So Brian Cage's appeal is no longer he's the only big guy, jack guy that can do those things. Looks like Batista moves around like Rey Mysterio. He's a video game character. He's like as if you went in, you edited Batista's moveset, and all of a sudden you gave him Rey Mysterio's moveset. They don't allow him to take off the handcuffs in AW ROH. They don't allow him to do the things that he can do. If you ever see him in a AAA ring under a mask, he can go out there and steal the show and be the biggest star of the night. And he's larger than life. I mean, there's just a body type. He is a quintessential pro wrestler, but he's shocking. You would expect him to work this slow and prodding pace, and it's just not the case with him. I think when he came out for the match with Double or Nothing, and he was the whatever the Joker, I guess he was, or whatever, he was the mystery guy coming out. He came out with the pink eye. I just think that was pretty much, it symbolizes his whole AEW existence. He's had some bright spots here. He's had some moments where he's really shined, but they've never quite put the faith in him. And he's been a good soldier. He goes out there and he doesn't do the Miro approach where he doesn't want to take the bookings, and he may not be on TV week to week and looking good. He might be on Dark. He's been a good soldier. And I don't know if WWE's the spot. I think for me, if I'm booking WWE, I think they would love someone like him, but they had the opportunity before and they didn't scoop him up. So has me thinking, are they going to take the risk on him? I think the WWE audience would eat him up, man. Like with the way he's able to do the things he does. I think he'd be perfect for the casual fan. He pops up on the screen. They don't even know what he's done before. Just go out there and let him do the lucha style that he does at his size. They probably would be like, holy shit, it's the next big thing. But I don't know if they'll ever put the machine behind him.
Yeah, man, I completely agree. I think he could do well there, but I don't know if the interest is there for him. But I think he would be. I mean, he's got the look. He's got the look that honestly nobody else in that company really has right now, and I think that he would be a big get for them if they tried to use him correctly. But honestly, right now, the way I see it, they're not going to, if WWE signs him, they're not going to bring him in and have him be in the, the world title shot. He's going to come in and be a mid card. He's going to come in and be a mid card guy. And I can't really, I'm not keeping up with WWE programming the way I used to, but like, honestly, racking my brain right now in this moment, I can't really think of a mid card opponent to really put him with that I think would be worth his time. Maybe he goes back to Impact. Like you said, maybe he spends some more time in AAA. I mean, I think the guy's gonna, write his own card anywhere that he goes. Like you said, he is a good soldier. And I mean, I'm fine with him sticking around ROH, but it's going to be interesting to see where he goes. I think if done right, WWE could be a really good spot for him. I would love to see a Brian Cage Brock Lesnar match. I would love to see a Brian Cage Big E match on Big E's return. We've heard rumors that there, was plans for Big E to have some sort of return or some sort of, vignette or spot on WrestleMania. Rumors are that maybe he's not healthy enough for that to happen, but man, that would be if you are going to bring Brian Cage in, that would be a dream match. Talk about two big meaty dudes slapping meat. He doesn't get much meatier than that, man.
Yeah. Well, he actually tweeted at Bobby Lashley about potentially working him, and like those matches to me, they're a draw in my brain, but I'm not sure if the casual fan even knows who Brian Cage is. I'd imagine he would get a full rebrand from WWE. They may repackage him completely and make him someone different, but maybe that's what he wants. Maybe he wants to go out there and try his chops of going out there against a guy like Gunther. Like I could see them having a banging match, those two styles going at it. So the choice is his. There's going to be work out there for him. Like there really is. I think he has the ability to pick where he wants to work. It depends on how he wants to be portrayed. And is he happy? I can't imagine he's happy with the way the AW run has gone, because I look at him as a top guy and he just hasn't been presented as such. And I think going back to what we were saying, everybody has such a high work rate in AW. So if you're a guy who looks good and works well, everybody does that. So he has to find a different stick. And ROH would be the perfect place for him to blossom, because there's no reason he wouldn't be at the top of the card if he just kind of waits it out. I think there's nobody else aside from, look at the top of the card now. I mean, he'd be the perfect one-up challenge for a guy like Eddie Kingston as the champion. Why not?
Be an incredible match.
All right, let's move into the next match here. And you know what? This match might just possibly steal the weekend. And there's not a lot of build here. This is not one of those long-term bloodline storytelling things, but we have the Mega Championship being defended here on ROH programming, and this is the third time we're going to see Io Del Vikingo in the last few weeks, and he had the banging match with Kenny Omega. He had the triple threat match against the aforementioned Commander, who he's wrestling against here, and he also wrestled Black Taurus at the WrestleCon Super Show last night at this point. So Commander had his own little showing out party. It's interesting to see them going at it, because the only reason Commander got his shot, aside from just being amazing, was because Vikingo wasn't available. And Vikingo worked a few dates in GCW, absolutely crushed it. Commander's been all over the place. Got his name mostly in GCW with the rope walking. This, again, could be one of those matches that makes people looking to the catalog of both what these both young wrestlers have been doing. Vikingo caught some fire with, he was in the top 10 of the PWI rankings, and a lot of people didn't know who he was, and they said, who the hell is this guy? And if you didn't do your research and check him out, they brought it to your doorstep by having him come to AEW and GCW and tear it up. This guy, and he's on the shorter side, but so is Rey Mysterio. But I compare that 1996 debut against Kenny Omega to just as great, if not better, than the Rey Mysterio debut in 1996 in WCW. It really was that good. And then Commander, I've, personal friend of the podcast. I love Commander. Him and I are buddies on Instagram, and he's been awesomely nice because, I gave him the props on the GCW show, and we follow each other on Instagram. So seeing his rise in the past, 5 months has been insane. Just watching, and rightfully so. He does things in a style. Both Vikingo and Commander do things in a lucha style. It feels like you can't do anything different. They've somehow reestablished the bar for what lucha wrestling is. And that's crazy to think of all the guys that came before him. They're even stepping it up.
Yeah, I know I've thrown this term around a couple of times tonight already, but man, this is absolutely a dream matchup. This is going to be, I think you said it best. It's a good chance to steal the show. I mean, if anybody didn't know who El Hijo del Vikingo was before, they didn't know he was. They saw anybody that watched Dynamite last week knows who he is now. And that guy's not going to be, I don't see him exiting the top 10 of PWI's top 500 anytime soon. Commander, man, like I said, I've not seen a ton of his work, but what I have seen, I'm incredibly impressed with. I think this is going to be an excellent match. I know, it was the most recent one announced. It's an already super stat card, but bring it on. I'll always take more. Also, just really happy to see a AAA championship being defended on an ROH TV. I think that's something that, or on an ROH pay-per-view. I think that's really cool. I think that's something that, Ring of Honor has done a good job of in the past, and I'm glad to see them kind of continuing to carry that flag of, we like to do business. We like to, this isn't all just ROH. Don't say anybody else's name here. Like, we definitely are open to working with other companies and highlighting other companies. I think it's a big damn deal that AAA is getting a title defense on a Ring of Honor's WrestleMania. So, man, yeah, you talking about that Commander having that match with Black Taurus. I absolutely love Black Taurus, man. He's been at, I think, 3 of the last 4 Impact shows that have come through Louisville. And, man, that guy's incredible as well, man. A lot of really, really great talent floating in and out of AAA these days. This match is going to be easily an instant classic.
Yeah, man, long live Lucha Libre, because the style of wrestling it keeps wrestling exciting. And I'm not saying, and you can say the same thing about any type of style, but you do a whole card of just lucha, I know people can get sick of it, but when it's just done sprinkled in, especially on a card like this, it could really make a world of difference of taking a show that was good to the next level and offering something different to a fan base that may not be exposed to it. So a guy like Vikingo and a guy like Commander having the opportunity to go out there and change the pace. And it's not always, wrestling is a buffet. Wrestling can be ice cream flavors, whatever hyperbole or very cliche thing you want to say about your pro wrestling. This is just a different flavor. And I think this is going to impress a lot of people that weren't expecting maybe to be impressed. And a lot of the ROH people are just diehards. I mean, when people have been watching SuperCard of Honor since 06, they're the ones ordering the $40 pay-per-view and checking it out. But you may attract some AEW casuals that pop this on that happen to just see the ad on Rampage, see the ad on Dynamite, and then watch it because they're really into wrestling on the weekend and like, oh, WrestleMania this weekend. Get a little appetizer here on Friday, and they could be blown away. And this could be their gateway drug into checking out AAA, checking out New Japan Pro Wrestling. That's the beautiful part about opening these doors. I mean, pun completely intended about these forbidden doors, opening different doors and finding out what's behind them. And it unlocks a whole bunch of history. And then you're going to go back and check out Supercard of Honor 5, where Tyler Black, a.k.a. your favorite boy Seth Rollins, taking on Roderick Strong for the ROH World Championship. Wait a minute, Seth Rollins was in ROH, and then the whole world just starts to come unraveled. I love it. It's so good.
I think it adds a lot of depth to the card. You know, for a casual fan, if somebody's not as exposed to Lucha Libre, it might be difficult for him to get into an entire show of all Lucha Libre style. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just, it also, I think, speaks to the style and the quality of Tony Khan's booking a little bit. You know, he's not, I like that he's down to give us, like you said, a buffet always. You know, a little bit of everything on almost every show is really, really appreciated. It's not like, you know, it's not his way or the highway. He likes to highlight, you know, anything and everything that he can. So, yeah, like I said, adds a lot of depth to the card. Can't wait to see this one.
Yeah, and if I had to be pressed to say what is Tony Khan's favorite style of wrestling, I couldn't pick it. I mean, bookers of the past, you would know exactly what their favorite style of wrestling is. I think everyone could pick Vince McMahon's style of wrestling, what his favorite type of match would be, just based on how he books. Tony Khan, I feel like, and the difference, and we've been seeing a lot of the conversation about Tony Khan's booking style and ROH and AEW being a lot different. And I think really what the difference is ROH and why he did so well the first Supercard of Honor, which was last year with, you know, main evented by Gresham and Bandito, and then the FTR Briscoes match, is he really builds Supercards really well. He's a wrestling historian who's just a fan at heart. And he's always in the weeds trying to put together matches and cards that feel like they're a statistician's dream, where you're finding the right formula to put together the right card. We mentioned buffet and finding the sprinkling of the different styles. And I think what has happened on Dynamite is they're trying to cater to that casual audience that isn't really going to be, I don't think he's as good about being able to do like a gloss over. I think he really just, he's especially ROH. This is booking to the diehards. For AEW, it's booking for a larger, maybe main scale audience that happens to be watching Big Bang Theory and then gloss over it. This is a completely different style. And I think his strengths are really emphasized on this card. Like, you really see what he's good at as far as bringing the style of booking into it. I think this is where he thrives. And then, you know, everything else kind of falls into place with this. Really, it's a supercard. There's no other word for it.
Yeah. One of the most stacked cards I can remember in recent history, for sure. And with that being said, you want to go ahead and transition into the TV title match?
Let's do it,
dude. All right. So TV title defense, Samoa Joe versus the one and only Mark Briscoe. Man, they've done a good job of building this match. I mean, obviously these guys have history, a lot of history between, you know, meeting, you know, they've met a couple times in singles, but, you know, they've had a lot of matches where Joe's had different opponents against the Briscoes. I'm really, really excited about this, man. I think that, you know, they've done a good job of putting Joe over as just the, you know, an absolute monster, but also really telling this story of the next chapter of Mark Briscoe and what his career looks like going forward, while honoring the memory of his brother Jay. And I mean, I'm just gonna, I don't think there's, you know, it's going to tell a great story, but I feel like, you know, there's not necessarily as much to discuss with this one as there have been some other matches on the card. I think I'm 100% confident in this one. There's no way that Mark Briscoe doesn't take the title here. It'd be his first singles title that he's ever won. We just got done singing the praises of TK's booking style. If for some reason, it would be I can't describe how massive of a missed opportunity it would be here to not put this belt on Mark Briscoe. And I would have to really, really question what the decision was behind it if Joe retains here. I think it's clear. I think it's going to tell a great story. I don't think there's going to be a dry eye in the fucking house, in the ring, or in the crowd, or anybody watching at home when they raise Mark Briscoe's hand. I'm sure that Joe is also, even though they built him as this gigantic monster, this evil heel, I'm sure he's going to be raising Mark's hand with tears in his eyes too, and everybody's going to be thinking of Jay.
So if we go back 8 years to almost the day, March 27th, 2015, Redwood City, California, so only a few miles away from Los Angeles, Supercard of Honor 9, main evented by Jay Briscoe and the aforementioned Samoa Joe for the ROH World Championship. And you know that Tony Khan has that in his mind, and you know that Mark Briscoe has it in their mind. One of Samoa Joe's favorite matches in the career was against Jay Briscoe in that capacity. I think I recommended on an Honor Society in the past about checking out Jay Briscoe versus Samoa Joe and the wars that they had. This is just poetic. This is really poetic to see one of Jay's best opponents as a singles competitor taking on Mark. And for the TV title, which again, it's not the world title, maybe that's a missed opportunity and they didn't feel like they could get to that point, but that's neither here nor there. The TV title is very, very prestigious, and Joe has brought it to a spot where it feels very important, just as important as the world title, if not more important in some ways. Like, I think throughout his run, there was a moment in time where the TV title felt more important than the world title. And that might be, you know, an indictment on the world title and how it was presented while it was on AEW television and the way Jericho was presenting it and all that. But the TV title feels important. It's not just a mid-card title. This feels like a huge pivotal moment. You mentioned it. Mark Briscoe's never had a singles run. He's never had a singles title. This match is being dedicated to his brother. And we also have that moment with the tag titles as well. What the spirit and the lineage and just the everything that feels like Ring of Honor goes through the Briscoes. Everything that ROH and the Briscoes represented are one and the same. So I think it's very awesome to see the Supercard of Honor be very cap-ended by potentially the first match of the night with Mark Briscoe and Jay being honored. And also this match, Mark getting his moment here. And I think, like you said, no brainer. Mark's going over here and we're going to get a nice TV run with him. And it's bittersweet to see it take this to get Mark having his moment. They were always going to be building ROH around the Briscoes. And it's just a shame because what could have been, what would have the Briscoes been doing at Supercard of Honor? Like, don't know who they would have been defending against. Maybe it looks different. Maybe they have another match with FTR. Who knows? Like, we don't know the butterfly effect that would have been happening. And I'm sure Tony Khan had in his notes somewhere about what would have been. And that might make for a fascinating book someday. But all I know is that this moment is in tribute to Jay. And that's a beautiful thing. That's the best way to pay tribute to someone in pro wrestling, is just going in the ring and having an awesome match. And I think that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, man, I completely agree. You mentioned earlier about Mark and, maybe having a shot at the world title. I think that him getting the shot at the TV title first is a perfect transition into his, run as a singles champion. And, we mentioned earlier in the show, getting to see some new belts this weekend. How appropriate would it be for this new chapter in Mark Briscoe's life? He wins it. And, next Thursday when we see him on TV, he shows up with a new belt, or maybe they present him with a new TV title right then and there. Really, really excited to see this chapter for Mark Briscoe. And I mean, I can't think of a better way to honor Jay than to have Mark versus Joe.
And I'm just picturing the finish in my head, and I think the right thing to do is have Mark beat him with the J Driller. I think that would be a great way to end the match. And Samoa Joe, you mentioned before, I think we were talking about Joe. He feel like every tribute video we saw, especially the Jay Briscoe tribute on YouTube that they aired, because TBS wouldn't air it and all that bullshit. But felt like he was one of the hardest hit by this, and just he was very hard pressed to get his words out. That's how emotionally touched he was by the whole situation. And I know this means a lot to him. Like you mentioned, there's not gonna be a dry in the building as far as fans, but I have a feeling that it's gonna be hard for Joe to keep it together too. Just seeing, just understanding the gigantic nature of this moment. And it's certainly not lost on anybody, not lost on the fans that know exactly what this means. And we saw Mark keep his composure in that first match back, but this is gonna be a huge moment because I feel like it's all gonna be rushing back on a really big stage.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of big emotions.
So let's get into the main event here. We have the ROH World Championship on the line. They don't have the new title on his shoulder here, but maybe we'll see a new championship. And we look at the old logo on here. It's Claudio Castagnoli defending against Eddie Kingston. And this has been the top of the dream angle since Castagnoli made his AEW debut back at AEW Forbidden Door. Those that are aware, these two guys have a storied history going all the way back to Chikara, as we mentioned last week. And they're weaving this into actual kayfabe and making real life storylines, and what's true and what's not, who knows. But Eddie Kingston made it clear to the dirt sheets he didn't want to work with Claudio, and much to his chagrin, he did wind up teaming with Claudio to take on the most hated man in Eddie Kingston's life, Chris Jericho, in the JAS. And Kingston had his moments stolen by Claudio with the swing at the top of the cage and all that. So I want to talk about storytelling, and some matches here on this card don't have a deep, rich history, but this match does. And it didn't even need a lot of build. This is one of those things that just need to be heated up a bit. And all the story is just thought out for you. It's a beautiful, long history between both men. And this could be a crowning moment. I mean, on this whole card, there's a historic moments that could be made here. We could have a very historic moment seeing Eddie Kingston being given the mantle to be the guy and having the opportunity to be the guy. I've been waving that flag saying I thought he should have been the interim champion when Punk got hurt. They had the opportunity, and I think it was the only one you're ever going to get to make him the AEW World Champion. But now the opportunity arises where you can make him the ROH guy and build it in the image of the everyman and the guy that goes out there. And want to talk about heart and soul. He is a heart and soul type of guy that any company be lucky to have being their leader. And he makes for great, captivating television, because what is a work? What is a shoot? Nobody knows, because Eddie Kingston is just out there shooting from the hip, and put the world title around him and have him feuding with different guys on the card and carrying that banner as the main guy in ROH. Man, that's a really cool opportunity that I don't know if Tony Khan wants to miss out on.
I think it would be a huge mistake to miss out on it, man. I think that Eddie is the perfect guy to put the belt on, especially at this point in the new era of ROH. I think it's just a really good, strong way to start. I mean, I think that Eddie's long overdue to be the guy somewhere. And I mean, like you said, man, the storyline writes itself, especially with their past going back to Chikara. But even if you're a casual fan, you're not familiar with Chikara or anything back, I thought that they've done a really good job of filling in the blanks for you with just the 5 weeks that we had leading up to, to this pay-per-view. I mean, the end of episode 1 of the new era of Ring of Honor, Eddie comes out and calls out Claudio, and Claudio just exits the ring and doesn't talk to him at all, just totally curves him, super disrespectful. I mean, we talked about the backstage segment with Caprice Coleman, was you could cut the tension with a butter knife. It was so thick. And I mean, even I thought the little package they did before the show this week of the preview for SUPERCARD of Honor was, I mean, there was still more to tell there. The interviews that they had with both guys, it's not just Eddie's content for Claudio. It's a two-way street. Like, those guys were very close for a long time, and they had a very serious falling out, and they're at some extreme odds with each other. And I think it's one of the better stories that we've seen told in a long time, and kind of in any promotion for that matter. So yeah, I think Eddie goes over here, man. I don't think I don't want to see it the other way around. I want to see that belt around Eddie Kingston's waist. I don't think it needs to be anywhere else.
And it's interesting too. I completely agree with you. I think Eddie is the choice, and I think that's where they're going to go. It's interesting because Claudio feels like he's so tailor-made for this new ROH, but now more than ever, it feels like the JS and the BCC and all the different factions over there. The BCC is going to be a very huge piece of what AEW television is, and it's the perfect opportunity to pull Claudio from this hold. And it feels weird because if he felt like he was always going to be this guy, but right now I think AEW needs Claudio more than ROH does, and that's an interesting dynamic, because if you would have asked me 4 weeks ago, even 5 weeks ago, what does Claudio do? And I've been like, he's an ROH guy through and through. I don't see that anymore. I think this is Eddie Kingston's time to build around him, and the top of this card is going to look a lot different than we originally anticipated. Going all the way back to last year with John Gresham and Bandito, looks a lot different than we originally thought. And that's a good thing, because like Eddie Kingston wasn't even an idea that he could be a guy that ROH put as their champion. But I think the opportunity is right there with the Kings Road style Japanese wrestling. I think it fits perfectly into the style that they want ROH to be. And he's a veteran that could teach a lot of different guys. You mentioned the young roster, but whoever is doing the first program as the world champion could benefit a lot from. And yeah, is it possible Claudio wins? Of course. I think that it is possible that they keep titles on, because the same reason I mentioned with Wheeler. But if Wheeler loses to Shibata, the writing might be on the wall that BCC is completely being removed from ROH or extracted just for the time being. And when they're ready to bring him back, they bring him back.
Yeah, man, I completely agree. And I think the writing on the wall a little bit too, just from Dynamite this week, where we had the return of Danielson and him turning heel and realigning himself with BCC, which I absolutely loved. Danielson and Mox are not about to be showing up on ROH TV. They're about to be the biggest force to be reckoned with in AEW right now. And I think it makes the most sense to keep Claudio and Wheeler with them. Like I said, man, it's I think Eddie's long overdue to be the guy. I mean, he is that blue collar people's champion. I think there's nobody that watches wrestling that can't connect with Eddie Kingston. I mean, he's the realest motherfucker in pro wrestling. Like, that's just no other way to sugarcoat it or put it, man. Like, he's going to be an incredible ROH champion. I'll be, like you said, of course there's a chance, but I'll be real disappointed if he doesn't get to win here.
So, I mean, the interesting part about the BCC, it felt like they were going to be one of those like banners they fly across, and where guys would just wear the shirt, similar to Bullet Club, where like you show up at Impact, you're wearing a Bullet Club shirt, you're happy to be part of the group. But the BCC feels like it really is going to be essential storytelling. So I think it would almost be a very bad decision to keep the title on Claudio. If he's going to be part of this group that's running roughshod over AEW television, having him with the ROH title around his waist makes for it's harder to do meaningful stories with the world champion, because if you want them to be both separate, you really can't have someone's world champion taking losses on different in different storylines, especially on a weekly television show. So I think it's important to get the title off of Claudio, let him do business and do the blood and guts or whatever it leads to, this faction warfare, and let Eddie Kingston, play in the sandbox here. I think this is a fun little creative outlet for him and for everybody involved, because they don't have the pressure of the big network and the big TV deal, all of that. You can really have fun, and Tony Khan can have a lot of creativity and flexibility to not have to cater to so many people. This is for the diehards, and who's better for the diehards than Eddie Kingston?
Nobody's better for the diehards than Eddie Kingston, man. And I think, if they were to try to leave the belt on Claudio and also pull him further into the BCC heel storyline in AEW, the only thing it's going to do is cheapen and lessen the importance of the Ring of Honor heavyweight title, which is not the right move. And I don't see Tony doing that.
So that's all we got for you guys. I mean, I hope you guys enjoyed the weekend of wrestling. We will be back reviewing all that you heard about SuperCard of Honor on Wrestling Tonight. We're bringing Colton back on by popular demand. He's going to be hopping on Wrestling Tonight again, the first ever two-time guest on Wrestling Tonight. We'll be going live on Monday to break down everything with WrestleMania, everything with the IWGP, the New Japan Pro Wrestling and the Impact Show, the Multiverse, the GCW Collective, and of course, SuperCard of Honor. So Colton will be on there. We'll be breaking down all the matches, telling you guys what we thought, if we were absolutely wrong, if we were absolutely right. And you guys leave your thoughts in the comments and tell us what you thought about not only ROH presentation, what you thought about the show. We appreciate all of your support. If you want to go out there and extend some more support for WrestleMania weekend and give all the love, go to theturnbuckletavern.com. You guys can pick up merch from ProWrestlingTees.com, or you can even get some from Teespring. There is the old school retro Honor Society logo. We don't have a new logo on there yet, but pick up a shirt from somewhere else. Leave a review, most importantly, on Spotify or Apple. Subscribe. Check out our Instagram. Do all the stuff that you need to do to support us. We are rapidly growing, and we do appreciate the support, and we do appreciate all the love. That being said, man, this has been a blast. You and I talking about Ring of Honor, and I'm looking forward to the show. I can't wait to just sink my butt into the couch and enjoy the next few hours of wrestling and the next few days of wrestling. It's going to be a blast.
It's my favorite weekend of the year, man, where I get to watch 14 hours of wrestling with no interruptions in 3 days. It's going to be such a good time. But yeah, thanks to everybody who's been sticking with us and watching. We really, like Ace said, we're having a blast doing this. And yeah, keep hanging with us, man. We got tons of good content continuing to come your way.
All right, guys. Well, enjoy the show. We'll see you on Monday, and Colton will see you at Wrestling Tonight on our live edition to talk about all the news. So as always, guys, abide by the Code of Honor. We'll see you next week.